Hey y'all, my name is Hannah Grace Laughlin, and I will be talking a little bit about hearing from God. So when I think about hearing from God, one of the first passages that I think of is 1 Kings 19. And 1 Kings 19, 11 through 13 is specifically where I'll be talking out of. And we'll drop it in the comments so that you guys can go look at the verse if you would like to. I'm going to summarize it just a little bit so you understand what I'm talking about. But you can go look at it on your own. So 1 Kings 19 basically describes the situation where God passes by Elijah when he's on the mountain. And so God says to Elijah, go stand on the mountain, I'm going to pass by. And what Elijah experiences is actually pretty crazy. The first thing that he experiences is a great wind that passes by, and it breaks up all the rocks around him. And the verse says, but the Lord was not in the wind. Next, what happens is after the wind comes, an earthquake comes. And it says, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. And it says, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. And in verse 13, it says, so it was when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. Suddenly a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? So we understand by this passage that God has a still small voice. But what we don't always understand, what we don't always clue into is the fact that is the implication of what it means that God has a still small voice. And the implication of that is that to hear a still small voice, to be able to hear from God, we have to be quiet. And the truth is, if we're honest with ourselves, most of us are really not good at that. See, we live in a society, which I don't have to tell you guys this, you guys know this, you live it, where we grapple with the idea that solitude and silence are good things. Because society says they're bad, that solitude and silence is equated with loneliness, with not being enough, with not having enough friends to be able to fill your time with something else. I mean, the list goes on. And the thing is that with the internet, there is always something else to look up. There's always something else to be a part of. There will always be a new show to watch, a new game to play, a new social media platform. It feels like they come up every day. A new TikTok dance, a new YouTuber that you love. I mean, you name it, there will always be something else. And while these things are not bad in and of themselves, they can be destructive when they take the place of us hearing from God instead. And so the thing that we have to know is that we have to make space and time to sit in silence with the Lord. And I know it's uncomfortable. It is uncomfortable. It's hard. It's scary, especially when we're not used to it. But God calls us to it. And the cool thing is that in James 4:8, he says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Y'all, this relationship is a two-way street. God has been here the whole time, but it's time for us to show up. And while he calls us to prayer, while he calls us to make our requests known to him, that's not all a quiet time should be. We have to give him space to speak. And we got to sit in that. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. Sometimes we're sitting there and we're not getting anything and we're wondering where God is. But we have to give him space to be able to speak. And if we're talking, if we're filling up all of our time with TikTok and social media and plans and YouTube videos and all of these things, which again are not bad in and of themselves, they can actually be really great things. But if we don't make time to sit in silence with the Lord and to put all of that stuff out to the sides and just focus in for a couple of minutes to hear what the Lord has to say, then we're not going to hear from God because we're not being silent and we're not giving him the space to speak because he has a still small voice and we have to be so quiet to hear it. So I hope that you understand today that we need to practice listening prayer with our relationship with the Lord. And that is how that we are going to hear from God. We have to give him space. We have to sit in silence. We be still and know that he is God. And it's uncomfortable and it's not always easy. But God will speak when we are in step with him, when we are being quiet, when we open our hands and say, Lord, I want to hear you. So help me be quiet. Help calm my mind down, my heart down. Take out all the distractions. I want to focus on you. He'll speak. He really, really will. And that is the first step in hearing from God. And he speaks in all kinds of ways. We see it. He speaks through friends. He speaks through, he gives signs. There's so many ways that God speaks. But it starts with being silent and hearing that still small voice, because it's there. He's speaking. He is speaking all the time. But we don't often make space and are silent enough to hear it. So that's what I would encourage you with this Wednesday. And this week, try 5 to 10 minutes silent before the Lord. Do not talk, just silent. See what he says. Write down pictures that he gives you. Write down phrases that you get, songs, anything that you get, write it down. He's gonna speak, but we have to give him space. Love you guys.